Two of the most frequently asked questions I get on this channel are, one, what is Nintendo going to do for the second half of 2022 since the first half is so packed full of games? And two, when's the next Nintendo Direct? Is Nintendo even going to do anything now that E3 is canceled? Well, in this video, I'm going to help to provide you guys with some details that I think will help kind of answer some of those questions. But before we get into any of that, what's good everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. And let's go ahead and start off with the second half of 2022. But before we get to the second half, we got to talk about this all-star stacked first half because I haven't seen anything quite like this probably since the original Nintendo Switch launch back in March, and that 6 to 7 month stretch, if we're launch aligning it with the first 6 to 7 months of this year, it's pretty much stacked full of games. Now, maybe some will say it's not quite as good as back in 2017, and I understand that, Breath of the Wild and all of the dope games that came out, so I understand that. But in terms of first party releases, man, it is up there. Pokemon Legends Arceus coming out back in January, Triangle Strategy and Kirby and the Forgotten Land in March. We had Nintendo Switch Sports at the very end of April. We also have Mario Strikers Battle League and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes all coming out within the first 6 months of the year. Then of course, right at that middle mark, a little bit past that, we have Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that was moved up by a couple months, and also a game like Live Alive that Nintendo's helping out with Square Enix. So there is a lot of content. But what about the second half? What's going on there? Well, let's talk about the games that we know about first, then we'll get into some of the rumored games and stuff that I think is going to happen. So the games that we know about, we know that Splatoon 3, that's going to be a September early game. So then we also know about Bayonetta 3. That's going to be probably an October game if it stays in 2022. And then we also know about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which is probably going to be a November game. So even if you're looking at it like, what does Nintendo have for the second half, the real big second half? They've got 3 high quality titles set to go, 3 of their bigger games set to go there, which is more than what most first party companies can say at this point. So even if they didn't announce anything, that's still impressive in its own right. But I think that there's going to be a few more titles to fill in the gaps here. Now, one game that a lot of people talk about is Metroid Prime Remake or really high quality remaster, which I do think could happen this year. That's been rumored a number of times. I think that Nintendo might have been doing this for quite some time now, and that the Metroid Prime 4 cancellation, then rescrap, then having to redo the whole game and moving it over to Retro Studios, I think that that probably threw off their plans for Metroid Prime 1 and 2 and 3, or whatever they were going to do for a trilogy or a remastered or something like that. So maybe they wanted to hone in and focus on what many people feel is the best Metroid Prime game out of the trilogy, and that's the original Metroid Prime. So I think that Metroid Prime could come into play at some point in the second half of the year. Now, what else do we have that could be happening? Well, another game that people have been talking about quite a bit that could be happening or not is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, and also The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD. Now, there was an interesting quote-unquote update for it because many people felt the fact that Tantalus, the original developers of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD, they're the ones who remastered the game on the Wii U, since they stated in an interview that, hey, we haven't been asked, we don't know about it. Some people felt that, oh, well, that means it's not coming. But at the end of the day, Nintendo wouldn't need Tantalus, who did the heavy lifting of the remaster, to port the game over to the Nintendo Switch. Yes, you have the Wii U gamepad and there'd have to be adjustments there, but you wouldn't need the original team to get that done. Just like you probably wouldn't need the original team that did Tokyo Mirage Sessions to port over the game to the Nintendo Switch. I don't know who did that. It could have been the original team, but I have no idea. But you probably wouldn't need them, and that had heavy gamepad usage as well. So I don't really think that The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess would need Tantalus to get that done. Now, Tantalus did do the work for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, but once again, that's taking the game from the Wii over to the Nintendo Switch. So you're going to get that outside studio that can get that work done. This would be a direct port from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. And Nintendo has ported over many games from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch. And I'm not sure if those original developers who worked on the game had to get those done. They could get that to somebody else. So to me, that's not a concern. Nintendo owns the source code. They own the IP. They own everything with it. So they could give that to other developers to get that done. So that's not a concern for me at all. So I do think that The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD and also The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD could be coming in a double pack or something like that this year on the Nintendo Switch. Now, what is next up? We've got 2 remasters, remakes, whatever you want to call them. I get that. That's nice. But what about some new games that could be coming? Well, there's one game that I think that could be coming that would blow people's minds. And that would be a brand new Donkey Kong game, which has been rumored already. That has been rumored that the Mario Odyssey team is bringing back Donkey Kong in some way, shape, or form. With Super Mario Odyssey being a breath of fresh air for the Mario series, I think that the Mario team could actually take Donkey Kong, which they have a strong connection, Mario and Donkey Kong, and make a great game. Now, the big thing would be, is it 2D? Is it 3D? There has been some conflicting rumors on 2D or 3D for the next Donkey Kong game, and maybe it could be the hybrid. It could be there's 2D parts, and it could be that there's 3D parts. So we just don't know at this point. But what I will say is that it's been a long time since Donkey Kong has came out last. The last new release was back in early 2014 with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, which later got ported over to the Nintendo Switch. Donkey Kong was a marquee franchise for Nintendo, selling millions upon millions of copies on the Super NES, and it's kind of fallen from that sales grace. The quality of the games have been there. Donkey Kong Country Returns was great. Tropical Freeze is fantastic. Tropical Freeze is actually my favorite Donkey Kong game of all time. So I do feel that there is a huge market just waiting to be tapped for Donkey Kong, and that they need to really kind of dig into the well, get some fresh ideas, and bring something new to the table. And I think that the Odyssey team could definitely bring that out of Donkey Kong. Now, Retro Studios usually works on the Donkey Kong games. The last 2 ones were from them, but I think that they might have their hands full with Metroid Prime 4. So maybe it's just the Mario team, maybe getting some auxiliary support from Retro Studios, but we'll see if Donkey Kong actually ends up being made here. So those are my thoughts on what could be coming in the second half of the year and what we already know. Now, what about the Nintendo Direct? I still believe that Nintendo will have a Nintendo Direct in their usual or right around the time of June. June is when Nintendo always has their Directs. Yes, there was the COVID year where they had it, I think July, it was like Direct Mini, but everything was in the state of panic and flux. We did not have any certainty. We did not know when games were going to be coming out. A lot of developers got sick with COVID. A lot of developers, didn't know where they were going to be working, whether they're going to be going to the office. There was shutdowns depending on what state that you live in or what country you were in. There was just too much turmoil to even determine the lineup and what you're going to do and get trailers together and the health of the company. Not at this point. I don't think that they have to worry about that. Last year was good. Everything was fine last year for them in June. So I think that Nintendo will have another Nintendo Direct. Usually what they have for E3, they're going to have that in June. But if they don't, I feel that a Summer Direct is still in the line. It's still in the works. Nintendo has had a fantastic year so far, and they're continuing to kind of plow through this year, doing absolutely amazing. So I think that they're going to keep that momentum going. Plus, they have to detail what's going on with this second half. They have to talk about Bayonetta 3. We need another trailer for that game or something. And if it's going to be delayed to next year, just go ahead and let it out of the bag right now at this point, because there's still Splatoon for the second half. There's still Pokemon for the second half. And there are some third-party games that are going to be coming as well. So I still think that if that happens, they're going to talk about that at E3 or very shortly after it, but probably around E3, because we're due for a brand new trailer if the game is actually coming out in the second half of the year, which I think it is, which will be October. But I think the most interesting thing for me and Nintendo Direct coming up is exactly how Nintendo's going to pace it. We know about what happened in the first half in all the games, but obviously there's Xenoblade, there's Live Alive, and if this is in June, that means they probably release something on those games in there as well. So what else are they going to have? We know about Bayonetta, we know about Splatoon, we know about Pokemon. They're going to give more details about that, but what are going to be the surprises? So I think that the surprises are going to have to line up with the pacing of the show and what they do, because I'm 100% certain that Nintendo will have a Nintendo Direct either in June or July. I'm guessing or predicting June, but I think that July could also happen as well. So how are they going to pace this show? What are they going to have? What are they going to do in order to make it exciting for the fans out there and to bring the energy and bring the momentum to their aging hardware at this point? Now, another question that I get a lot on the channel is Nintendo going to talk about next gen stuff at E3? And I think that no, Nintendo is not going to talk about their next generation device at E3. I think that Nintendo is going to keep it games. And whenever they do decide to discuss the Switch 2 or what they're doing next, they're going to make sure that it has its own event, that they do some type of new trailer for it and completely separate it so they can get the point across. Hey, this is Switch 2. This is what it does. This is the system. This is how it's going to work. They do not want the same confusion that we saw from Wii to Wii U, that we saw from DS to 3DS. They do not want some of those issues that were popping up on the internet, whether it comes to the release lineup, when it comes to what type of games it's going to have, what are the functionalities of the system. They don't want that. All it causes is launch headaches, like we saw with the Nintendo 3DS and like we saw with the Wii U, back to back. That can't happen. Nintendo's too big of a company. They have too much money, and they have too much talent to be botching lineups and to be botching launches like that. There's no need. They have what they need when it comes to resources. They have the right people in place. There's no reason to mess this one up. So I think that Nintendo's going to take their time, make sure everything's ready to go, and make sure that they don't confuse the message with other games that are coming out on Switch or anything like that. Now, if they did talk about it at a Direct, that would surprise me, but if they did, I think they would completely separate it and make sure that it was separated and not mixed in with the other regular Nintendo Switch stuff. But those are my thoughts on the matter. What do you guys think about all of this? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.